So you might not know this, but for the first time in history, Miss America, Miss USA, and Miss Teen USA are all black women. And to celebrate this fact, Essence Magazine did a cover featuring all three of them. And a IG account posted a picture of this cover in celebration of this event as well, one of the accounts that I follow. And the responses were very positive, except for one. And this response was, well, two of them are mixed, therefore not black. And I responded poignantly with two clown face emojis. Because that motherfucker is a full clown on IG. Here's the thing, black people, this bothered me for a long time. Years ago, when these people from Africa were stolen, they were then labeled as black to separate them from the people that stole them. They were not labeled as black by themselves. And then years after that, when their descendants were raised from the ground in blood and toil and sweat and destruction, those descendants were labeled black, not by themselves. They were labeled black as an experience of being in bondage. So today, those descendants do not get to label what is black and what is not. It was never your decision. Black is not a fucking choice. It's not a label or a point of pride. It's just what happens when you're born black in America. You don't get to decide that. Okay? So no more of this bullshit, no more talk of octoroons, no more talk of race mixing and how that dilutes purity. Because here's what I'll tell you. I'm black, my wife is Mexican, and my daughter is 100% Mexican. And she's 100% black, which makes her 200% better than you. And fuck what you heard. If you don't know, now you know. This is Tattoo with Children. I'm Flavaray, your host. Across from me in seat B is Ben, the Pirate Ben. And across from both of us is CIO No Pain. Guys, I'm coming hot today, but they had it coming. What'd you say?
I like it.
Yeah.
This is a good start.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good start.
Yeah, this feels like Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's up.
Yeah. We need some rage on Monday.
Yeah.
Wait, and guys, I just want everybody to know, like, this podcast is never going to be about just me ranting, all right? Like, it's always going to be about a conversation, and no conversation involves a rant. So the monologue is just me getting started at the beginning. So this is not going to be the whole thing like this, but I do want to continue a similar conversation to this because I don't think this is about race.
No,
okay?
well, and I'm gonna jump in real quick here because Eminem had this same exact opening 15 years ago.
You're right. Now that I think about it.
Because he got called a wigger,
right,
with a W, and if we have to bleep that out, we can. But that's what happened.
We ain't bleeping shit.
And
yeah, we don't bleep things.
And the thing about it is that it offended me then, and it offends me now, and you and I, because again, this was the reason I started getting tattoos.
Right.
Is people kept telling me my experience wasn't my experience.
Exactly.
In other words, I was born very poor in the South.
Right.
Which means I had a fantastic set of parents. I had a fantastic childhood.
Yes.
But my experience was not white.
Right. And that's hard for people to understand because we have this tendency still to put ourselves in this group, and then everyone not in this group is what's labeled the other.
Right.
This group and the other. And you don't want to blend those two because then your identity gets all fucked up. You don't know who you are.
Right.
I know, like, for black people, a lot of it's jealousy. We see people that are light-skinned, and they're like, well, they probably have it easier than I do, is what we say in our collective soul heads or whatnot. Like, I've heard it my entire life, and I've never fucking understood it.
Right.
There was this episode of The Jeffersons where, you know, they had that interracial couple in the building, and their daughter was really dark-skinned, and her brother came back one episode, and he was, like, you know, pretty much a white guy. with he was like a curly haired Jew kid.
Right,
You know?
right.
And at the end of the episode, she like yells at him, like, why you? Why couldn't it be me that was light skinned and have the, and that was so fucking confusing to me.
Right.
Because there was never a time in my life when I felt that my skin should be lighter.
Right.
Like I just never felt that. I didn't understand the tendency to want that. I know that makes me weird, but it's definitely true, and it followed me my entire life, where people would be like, "Yeah, it would be so easy to be if I was light skinned or white." And I'm like, "Yeah, but then your food would suck."
Well, and it
You know?
But see, that even plays into.
You want to shorten your dick now, son? What are you talking about?
The reason that plays so heavy in my mind is that I was also born male.
Yeah.
So it is assumed that I had all this privilege.
Right.
So the people who did have privilege, right?
Right.
Treat people badly sometimes, and sometimes they treat others well.
Right.
But I didn't have that experience.
They have the choice to treat you badly or not, whereas you did not have that choice.
Right. I didn't. I had the choice I had was every time there was an opportunity, pick up a shovel.
Right.
Every time there was an opportunity, you hustle $5. It's not.
Right.
It's not like, hey, you know what I want to do on Sunday? I want to wash windows at church while everybody's inside talking to Jesus.
Right.
No, I don't want to do that.
That wasn't your decision.
Right, but I'm doing that because that's how we put food on the table next week.
Right.
And everybody's like, "Oh, y'all are such a blessing." I'm like, "What does that word mean?" that is not what's happening here. Blessing is not what's going on.
Right. Jesus is not on my heart saying, "Hey, guy, go out here and hustle for pennies."
Right.
No, I just need some pennies right now.
Right. And why do I need pennies? Because that government cheese is $3.28.
Right.
Every single. No, I think it was $3.89. I think it was $3.89 with tax. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And so, like, it wasn't. And so then I try to tell people, like, hey, man, I get you. Hey, woman, I get you.
Right.
And they're like, well, but
do you really understand? You can't really understand where I'm coming from.
Right,
I mean, I'm dark skinned.
Right. You have a penis, so you couldn't understand what it was like.
Yeah.
Well, then what do I understand?
I do think that there is room for discussion on privilege, whether that be male privilege versus white
100%.
privilege or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not like privilege doesn't exist. It does exist.
It's just blown out of proportion in a lot of scenarios. Not all of them. Now, here's the thing. I'm a huge proponent of recognizing of myself being a white guy, recognizing where my privilege takes place.
Yes.
Right. Where it exists.
Okay.
Right. And so,
are you able to recognize where privilege takes place?
I think so. When you reflect, but you know what? I say I think so, but what I think doesn't really matter until I have somebody who doesn't have what I have to be able to say, well, did you ever have to do this?
Yeah, that would be the point I would make. It's like, I don't think that, and this is not a knock against white people in general, but you can't recognize that privilege. It's impossible. It would be like if you were to recognize how much air you breathe as opposed to how much air I breathe.
Right. It was so eye-opening for me a few years back when I was talking to someone, and I said, well, I see these people in my social circles talking about right now how white privilege doesn't really exist, and I said, and I don't believe it, but I don't have a good argument against it. And this person, I even forget who exactly it was. It could be someone in this group. Said, here's the thing you got to remember. He goes, when my son turns 16, okay, as a black 16-year-old getting a license for the first time, we have to have an entire conversation about how to act if you get pulled over.
Right.
Did you ever have to have that conversation with your parents, is what was asked of me. I said, no, not really. Yeah, there's a whole different set of rules.
Yeah, because that 6-year-old kid, if he's black, is probably highly likely to have a negative interaction with the police before he's 21. I mean,
Right.
it's just gonna be like, I'm not saying he's gonna get killed for sure, but he's definitely gonna have a negative interaction.
Right.
And I think you're hitting on an interesting point, and I'm not trying to take it from you, Mike, but the thing about it is that the point you're making goes straight to my argument about women's rights. Whenever I hear men give their opinions on women's rights, and Mike, I've done this to you, Ray, I've done this to you, and I've done it to myself. Shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. Listen and learn. Because you don't, what Mike I think is saying is, because you don't have those parts, you can empathize. You're allowed to empathize.
Yes.
Okay? But you're not allowed to say that you understand the experience because you can't.
Right. Understanding the experience is literally impossible for me.
It is literally impossible. You can empathize with it, and there's nothing wrong with empathy. Empathy is something we've lost.
Yes.
Because we think empathy is the same thing as experience.
Right.
And it is not. So when you hit on that, what's interesting about that example you gave, I did have that conversation with my dad. I did have that conversation about what would happen and how to interact with the police. And I am very white.
And
I also, Ray, had that experience of having 3, not 1, not 2, 3 very negative interactions with the police before I was 21. So while I cannot say I understand the experience of being a darker color, I do understand the experience of being poor.
Yeah.
And that is an entirely different thing, because Willow Smith will never understand the interaction that I'm talking about.
Right.
She won't. It doesn't matter darkness, lightness, maleness, femaleness.
It's impossible because she's never going to be poor.
She's never going to be...
As long as we use currency.
She will never be pulled over by the law enforcement that I was pulled over by.
Right.
And again, I'm not speaking out against law enforcement here. I'm just saying, yes, I did have that conversation. And then I was very appreciative of my parents because it occurred.
Right.
And
but you got to understand how fucking unique that is to you.
Yes.
It's
a rare thing.
Yeah, it's a very rare thing for a white person, white fellow like yourself, to have so many black experiences throughout your entire life. And it's one of the things that I found very intriguing about you from the first time that we met. It was literally like meeting a black person in a white man's body, and it was entirely because of your experience. I still find that fascinating, that we've come from 2 separate directions to reach the same point. It's a kismet type thing, which I can't explain.
But it's one of the reasons we get along, because I don't think you look at your experience as primarily an experience of race.
No.
And I don't look at my experience as primarily an experience of gender.
I mean, like, my experience is, if I were to equate my experiences with other black people, it would be odd as well.
Right.
You know, like it was like people have always considered me to be a little weird, because my experiences and my perceptions didn't exactly match up with what the guys around me were experiencing and feeling and thinking. But it does bring up a flip side point, which I'll make in just a moment.
Doesn't matter if you're cool or hotter than the quarters all present, better lose the box. Doesn't matter if you're cool or hotter than the quarters all present, better lose the box. Doesn't matter if you're cool.
So we bring up this concept of race, groups, and the other, and empathy. Like you mentioned, empathy. And empathy is a great thing, but there are some unintended consequences for empathy sometimes. I'm bringing this up because of the Amber Geiger trial. Now, Amber Geiger was for those who don't know, she was a Dallas police officer who had a bad day, went home, walked into what she thought was her apartment. It was not her apartment, it was a neighbor's apartment. Saw her neighbor sitting on the couch. He gets up to say, "Hey, Amber, what are you doing in my house?" And she shot him dead. She goes to trial. She was convicted of murder and sentenced to 10 years. Now, a lot of people, including myself, thought that 10 years is a little light for walking into a person's house and shooting them dead, particularly when you're a police officer and should know better. But the interesting thing about that was the idea. Amber Geiger's neighbor was black and she's white. And so the whole trial was colored by race. The idea was that the police officer can, if they're white, will, get off or get a lighter sentence or whatever because they're white. Well, they kind of cut that off at the head by making the trial judge was a black woman. They surrounded her black women in the jury. It was like it was a very trial was very colored by race. In general, the other way to try and head off criticism. At least that's what it looked like to me. And during the course of this trial, you see all of these black women empathizing very, very hardcore with Amber Geiger.
Okay.
I mean, they absolutely, I would say they identified with her plight.
Okay. Where
they understood you had a bad day. I don't think you really mean it. You really meant that. You saw a man, men are scary, and he was coming at you, and he had a scary voice. You had a weapon, and you used it. And as a result, and also like the guy's brother also was very she didn't really try and do that, and gave her this big huge hug at her sentencing. You can see online. And as a result, she got a lighter sentence.
Okay. And
the whole time this is going on, I'm thinking, well, what about me? Does anybody empathize with my plight of the fact that in my house, I only eat my meals in one spot. Mm-hmm. And that spot is with my back to my chimney, because my chimney is 5 feet of stonework, and I know I can't be shot through that. No windows. I don't trust windows in my own house. Why? Because Amber Geiger walked into a guy's house and shot him dead on his couch. Mm-hmm. I don't want that to happen to me or anybody in my family, and so we eat in the living room where the chimney is.
Okay.
And it's not because I'm afraid that's going to happen. I know that because if it does happen, who's going to empathize with me? Nobody. How do I know that's true? Well, there was a witness in Amber Geiger's trial who was her other neighbor who heard the whole thing. And he was on the stand and crying and very upset because the person that looked exactly like him he had met earlier that day got shot dead, and he knows it could have been him, and so he's very upset in the trial, and he does his thing, and just a couple of days ago he was shot dead. Anybody know that?
Yeah.
Anybody?
I follow the story.
Men follow the story. CIO, no. Do you know that?
No, I did not know that. I have the story pulled up.
I'm fairly certain that a lot of people who listen to this, if they don't take the Dallas Morning News, they don't know that.
Within what was it, 2 weeks of the trial, he was shot at the same apartment complex, and he's not living anymore.
Yeah, no, he's completely dead.
Right.
Okay, so that's two black men shot around this situation.
Okay, so good.
And I'm not saying it was. I don't know why he was killed. Okay,
sure.
I have no idea who shot him or why they shot him. I'm just saying that he was shot. And
in addition to that,
go ahead.
There was another witness named Bunny, who had video of the aftermath. Submitted it to Dallas County DA's office. and received harassment and death threats. And the pharmaceutical company she worked at terminated her after a bunch of phone calls about her because of that video. So it's not just your actual life, it's being able to have a living period.
Right.
That's threatened.
But the overwhelming sympathy, the overwhelming compassion that takes 20 years off a person's prison sentence went to Amber Geiger. And that is not white privilege. It's not white man privilege. That is female blonde hair privilege. You know, it's like that is female tears privilege. It's a level of compassion that I can enjoy, to paraphrase Ryan Davis, a comedian. He put up a very good video on Instagram, Ryan Davis Comedy, about this very situation, where he was saying that, you know, he just knows he will never receive that level of compassion. And I know that I won't either, but I knew that before the trial started, that I wouldn't. I just find it very interesting that in talks about privilege, we always talk about white privilege as if that's the only kind of privilege.
Right.
There are other kinds of privilege.
Right.
You know, like I know for a fact that I have many, many privileges.
Right.
I have college graduate privilege.
Right.
You know, like I can walk into rooms right now that would kick Ben to the curb.
Right.
Right
and,
now.
Well, no, it would. They would, and they have. But it also, see, now we're getting into a very nuanced thing, but it also brings up one of the points that there's the privilege that you're born with, because I want to go back to CIO No Pain's point that it sounds as if sometimes when I'm speaking, sometimes when you're speaking, Ray, it's mostly the two of us. It sounds as if we're so excited about the topic that we come across, the tone comes across as concrete.
Oh yeah. People have said that about me, I'm low.
Right, but
like I know.
Right, like you know something that they don't know, and now you're sharing it with them.
Right.
Now, I know enough about you to know that that is not, in fact, the case.
Right.
You actually are just excited that the conversation is occurring, and you want to learn during it.
Yes.
You're very interested in feedback. You're very interested in the other. You're very interested in the different perspectives, but your tone is what sounds concrete.
Yeah.
Now, I know at least 2 listeners are going to respond to my DMs immediately and say, it's funny that you were schooling Ray on this when you and I are sitting here looking at each other across the table, and you know for a fact I'm not schooling you on shit.
No.
I am exhibiting the same exact behavior for a reason. I don't know this about you.
Right.
I'm just hypothesizing from what I've heard. I'm pulling from the banks in my mind, and I'm going, let me show people what it sounds like when I sound like I'm certain of something, but actually I'm just excited to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm not certain about shit.
Yeah, I'm never certain about anything that I bring up here.
So when we bring up privilege and we bring up empathy and we bring up these things and we sound like we're coming from a place of knowing, actually the tone you're hearing is not, well, these guys know more. That's not the fact. The fact is, we're just fucking excited that the conversation is occurring.
Yeah. Because honestly, no one is talking about this. That's what bothers me. Is like I'm not bothered by privilege. I'm not bothered. Even white privilege doesn't bother me.
Right.
You know, everything that happens in the universe right now brought me to this point. And I love being where I am, so
Right.
I don't have any complaints. But there are a lot of conversations that should be happening, that need to happen, that aren't happening, because people aren't willing to speak from a position of their own opinion.
Right.
You know, it's like, I'm going to sit in this seat. I'm going to say what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Come back and tell me that I'm wrong. I don't mind that. Come at me, bro.
Well, and that's a big point is that, I think one of the reasons the three of us are still friends and we maintain so many friendships across the board from so many different walks of life is because most of the time, we assume the first person to talk is wrong.
Yeah.
And the first person to talk, if we're being honest, between the three of us, in any given situation that's going to occur today as we go about the rest of our lives, it's going to be one of the three of us.
Right.
Yeah.
You're from Jersey, Flavaray has had this completely wild experience that gives him, a background of so much experience. It's almost like he's had 8 lives.
Right.
And I'm coming from this place of being the oldest of 8, my parents being together, reading, not that y'all's weren't, but reading so many books and reading so much literature at a very young age that it influenced me towards story. So we each come from a place of knowing someone has to say something.
Right.
Yes.
So one of us is just going to jump in and go, hey, I know I'm probably going to be wrong, but I'm Mike Payne, and I'm going to say the wrong thing. Hey, I'm Arthur Coleman, I'm going to say the wrong thing. Hey, I'm Ben Harbuck, and I'm going to say the wrong thing.
Right.
But saying it is going to get the conversation started.
Right. That's the hope. Is that a lot? There's a chance you'll be shot. That the first person stands up is going to get shot in the chest. There's that opportunity as well.
It's a huge risk. I mean, this goes to the second example I have of literally checking your privilege, which is somebody I know who has adopted multiple kids, at least one of them a black child. And she was in the grocery store one day, and she's in line, and there's a black lady in front of her, writes a check, and immediately the cashier gives this weird look and says, I'm going to need to see some ID.
Right.
Right.
And so the lady gives her the ID. She goes through the process. She looks tired of having to do this same thing everywhere she goes, right?
Right.
And the friend walks up with the kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the lady's pulling her bags out. She has a small amount of stuff. It's already been checked. And she goes and hands a check. And the lady goes, okay, no problem. And just processes it.
Right.
No ID needed, nothing.
Right.
So she's that person.
Right.
She's the first one. Why did you need her ID and not mine?
Right.
And she started the whole conversation in the most uncomfortable way possible because here's a 17, 18-year-old cashier who's just been told by management, if you suspect something,
right,
ask for ID,
Ask for
things
ID.
like that, and doesn't realize that her actions are inherently, I'm not going to say racist because that's the wrong term, it's inherently prejudiced.
Right, it is.
But it's also racist. Never be afraid of the term racist. Racist isn't always bad. It's not always a choice.
But this goes back to one of the things my dad used to tell me. He had been a police officer in Fort Worth, Dallas area, and one of the things he used to tell me about law enforcement. He said, as law enforcement, they're really just fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always super offended by that.
Right.
Like, okay, fishing is something you do as recreation.
Right. It's something that you do in your spare time.
Right.
Not in your job.
Right. So anyone who has a job that includes something that to me is recreation, I don't consider it a job.
Right.
Okay, but what he would say to me is, okay, but think about it. They can't write tickets for everyone this morning. They're just writing enough tickets that the rest of the society sees it,
Right.
okay, and maintains a balance of law and order.
Right.
Okay, I understand that concept, but I still feel like it's completely fucked.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that.
Because I understand we can't catch all the fish today.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make any sense. There would be no more fish. But where I don't like it is, can we, for instance, we live in the technological era.
Uh-huh.
Is it plausible that we would have a database? And so if the three of us go driving around for the next year here in East Texas, and you have been pulled over 7 times,
Uh-huh.
Michael has been pulled over none,
Uh-huh.
and I have been pulled over once. wouldn't it stand to reason that because of the seven times we've taken money from you and your family,
Right.
and that we not do that anymore?
That's okay for this guy.
Right. That Mike probably should pay his dues, and I should probably pay my dues because none of us drive as well as you do.
Right. Let's go ahead and spread out to different parts of the fishing.
Right.
pool.
Let's not catch the same
Let's
damn
not catch
fish.
the same fish over and over again.
Right, because he doesn't have an upper lip anymore.
All right. On that, we'll take a quick break.
Doesn't matter if you're cool or hottest, if the quad is all present, better lose a box. Doesn't matter if you're cool or hottest, if the quad is all present, better lose a box.
All right, we're back. This Tattoo with Children. So we've talked a little bit about my kids. We talked a little bit about our experiences. Talk a little bit about tattoos. Ben ran a special this last weekend. It was the 3-6 special.
Right.
Son of the Beast. It was he was trying to do 6 tattoos for $66 a piece.
Right.
Something,
right.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah.
How did that go, Ben? How many did you do?
I only ended up doing 2. I thought I was going to do 3, but the last guy flaked out at the last minute, and so that was frustrating. But interestingly enough, I'm going to talk about tattoos, but we really at some point got to do this Mark of the Beast shit, because 666 is not it.
No, it's not.
And I love that it gets thrown out there all the damn time.
I like that as but in popular culture,
Right.
that is it. Like,
Yes.
I mean, I don't mind it because I believe in story.
Sure.
Okay, so at this point, the story is, 366 at the base of the skull in a triangle is a sign of the beast. That's from
Correct.
The Omen, which is a story of fiction, which is fine. I'm sure that is true in some reality somewhere that actually happened,
Sure.
and so I'm good with it.
Except that when you go back to the Bible,
In the Bible.
and you read the Mark of the Beast, you read the mushroom-induced story of a
Yeah.
guy starving on an island with no trees.
Volcanic vapor.
Right.
Yeah, he was high as fuck. Okay, John's a great guy,
Yeah, sure.
but he was not immune to hallucinogens.
Right. I also like John, but the thing about the hilarious thing about it is you can't find the 6s in there except with a 1
Yes, 616.
or 3s.
Yes,
Which is crazy because 3 has always been my favorite number. Like I love 7.
mine too.
But 3, I love 3. I see 3 on the side of the road, 3 billboards. I'm like, well, we're taking the next exit.
Right,
You
right,
know?
right.
So the tattoo went well though. Ray, actually, your wife was one of the people that came in.
She was.
Martha, and she always sits fantastically, and we have really interesting conversations. I think it's partly because we're alike in some very weird ways, and then we're just completely opposite in other ways. But we had a really good conversation about academia and experience, and just kind of catching up. They
hadn't talked in a while.
Yeah. So that was good. It really, I mean, it was great for me. I love hearing stories about what people are doing and where they're going and who they're meeting, and it's the effect that it's having on them.
Yeah.
And then Amanda came in, and she was one, and she's really bought into the whole process of Black Spot since the beginning, which is just not that we're better, just that we are an experience worth having in the circle, in the realm of tattooing.
Right, in the realm of tattoo art,
Yeah.
our position currently is a little unique.
Yeah, it is. And so she bought into that from the beginning, is pretty much, been going as often as she can. She'll scrimp and save $1 here, $2 there, $3 there. And by the time 3 or 4 months goes by, she's got a little cash built up for it.
Right.
And she'll come get another tattoo. And sometimes she has an idea for what she wants, and other times she'll just be following us on social media and see something cool that we put out.
By the way, guys, just as a background on this 3-6 deal, the caveat to that deal to get it for $66 is you couldn't decide what it, like you had no idea what he was putting on.
Right.
You
You
just
didn't get
had
to
to
see it
accept
before
it.
her. Yeah.
You get to pick. You let them pick where they got it.
It wasn't a deal for me. That's what I do with Ben all the time.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. But that now we don't want to get back into privilege again.
Right. I was say that too. I said, nice. He's trying to talk about how much he pays for his tattoos, which is a no-no in any tattoo circle.
So the interesting thing, though, was that I had actually had that idea Monday night. We were rolling back in from Georgia around, it must have been 9 or 10 o'clock, and the sun had finally gone down. It had finally gotten dark. And we're coming through the latter half of Louisiana, crossing the border into Texas, starting to get off the big roads and head for the small roads to get home. And I looked up, and the sky was clear, but there were these clouds around the moon.
Yeah.
And so I didn't pay much attention to it. I think David was asleep. We had been in the car for a long time.
You guys had some shit going on all that time, and you're probably all tired.
And so I had rolled the window down, just to stay awake, and I might have been smoking a cigar or something, just kind of just chilling, just keeping myself awake, listening to music. And I kept looking back at this sliver moon that was up there, and I was like, man, that is cool. The clouds are almost layering in. And so that's what I had drawn. When I had the idea Wednesday night, I had a cancellation, and I don't really ever get disappointed in cancellations unless they all happen at once.
Right.
So this was not that. I got one cancellation, and so I said, hey, that wasn't meant to be. No big deal. It happens all the time. You guys are hearing the dogs behind us right now. We haven't gotten out of the doghouse yet. One day we'll have like a real studio.
One day we're gonna grow up.
Someday.
When we're adults.
Yeah, we're gonna
out
grow
of our
up.
parents' basement. We're gonna do this for real.
I'm starting to wonder, just to caveat, we'll get back to tattoos in a second, but when is adulthood now? Because I feel really okay. So I just turned 40. Mike, how old are you?
35.
35, right?
I'm 40. We're the same age.
Okay, so I just turned 40, and I got to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I feel like the threshold I'm crossing is from 20 into 21.
Yeah, something like that.
So I'm starting to wonder, when is adulthood?
The first thing I noticed when I turned 40 was, like, I thought what I would feel is old. Because from 25 to 40, I felt old.
Okay.
And now I turned 40, and I immediately knew that I had another 40 years ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I felt like a kid. I felt like I'm just starting.
Yeah.
It's like I said, this is where it begins. Because now for the first time, I have enough insight into myself that I can make decisions about what I do and what I don't do based on what I like and what I don't like.
Right.
To this point, I've been just deciding what it is that I liked.
Yeah.
I've been experimenting over and over again to see if the results were the same or if they changed or, whatever.
Right.
And now that I've got enough experience under my belt, I got enough insight into myself to be like, hey, I really love to fucking talk. I love to converse with people. I love to meet people. I should do that a lot more, and so I'm going to do a podcast where I have conversations.
So is there an age now?
I don't know. I don't think there's an age where there's
How do you feel?
It would be like, okay.
So being 35, right? What I've realized, hanging out with people who are generally a little bit older than I am, is that for the last 15 years or so, I've been taking myself way too seriously, right?
Okay.
And that has made me feel old. When I take life so seriously, because I have to have everything set up, I have to take care of all these people, or I have to do this, I have to do that, I take on this responsibility so hard, and every problem is a potential failure, right? You own a home for the first time, or you do this for the first time, you have a car, or you have kids, or whatever. You take yourself that kind of seriously, right? And you get to be in our age group, right? And you start realizing, you know what? Crap goes wrong, but it doesn't kill us.
Right.
I can stop taking myself so seriously, because even if something goes wrong, it's going to be okay.
Okay.
And it restarts the whole idea. You get to this age group, you get 35, 40 years old, you're like, instead of trying to do everything I'm supposed to do, I'm going to do what I want.
When I think about adulthood, I think about the older people older than me. So I
Right.
think about my parents or your parents. You know, my parents are in their 70s now.
Okay.
They had me pretty late, so they're older. And I think about my dad. Dude, talking to my dad is just like talking to a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, if I don't consider him a quintessential adult at all.
Okay.
You know, like, I mean, like, I wouldn't. Like if we were talking about, like, you know, hey, what am I gonna do with this 50 grand I got in my pocket here?
Right.
You know, I'm not gonna go to my dad and say, hey, Dad, tell me what to do. Like,
Yeah.
he ain't gonna give me that good advice.
Right.
You know, I'm gonna.
He'd be like, you can just put that over in my pocket right here. That's
Right.
what you
So
put
you
it.
know what we need to do? We need to go
Right.
down to the casino, boy.
See, but that's what I'm getting at, and I'm wondering: is it our retaliation to growing up in the '90s? Because see, now I don't feel like there is an adulthood. I don't feel like I'm going to become an adult. In other words,
Yeah.
I am 40 fucking years old, and I'm going, oh, okay. So I'm going to feel at 60 as if I'm a grown up. See, I don't feel that way.
I don't think so. I think that you just stop giving a fuck when you get older. Like, it's like I don't think you grow up. I think that you get less worried about the fact that you never grew up. You know, it's just
Right.
like at 60, people all talk about how 60-year-olds drive. They drive with abandon.
Right,
You know, they
yeah.
just pull out and they pull in and they
Yeah.
drive whatever speed they feel like.
Right.
And I don't think it's because they're bad drivers. I don't think it's because that they have bad eyesight or bad reflexes. I just think that they no longer care how you feel about what they do. And that's
Right.
not exactly an adult concept. All right? That's really more of a 5-year-old concept. Right? You know how your 5-year-old just doesn't give a fuck?
Yeah, and that's I think what I'm getting at is like I just really don't feel I'm 40 years old and I'm going like, well, shit. If I'm not an adult by now,
It's probably not gonna
it's
happen.
probably not going to happen.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the thing is you're going the other way now. You're going, I'm 40. I feel like I should be an adult because now I'm on
Right.
the slope of if I'm not an adult now, I'm never going to be.
Yeah,
Because
what-
from this point forward, I don't give a fuck.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is like I'm still taking all my pants and like like making a mark on my pants below the knee, and then taking them off like when I get to work and just like cutting the bottoms off of them.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
like, this is not a thing adults do.
Yeah, adults
Like,
don't do that shit.
Adults don't do
Adults
this at all.
don't buy a perfect good pair of pants and take a scissors to them. That's some dumb shit. That's what kids do. You know, like them emo bastards putting on makeup and
Right.
shit. But like, dude, how
I'm
many?
doing something I would yell at my teenager for.
Exactly. And I catch myself doing that all the time. Like,
Hey, guys, I just have to give you all a heads up. I went
Sure.
live about 3 minutes ago.
oh, okay.
So we are, in fact, live right now.
All right. Anybody
And,
on? Just
Yeah,
out of
that's,
curiosity?
we got, people are actually joining in the conversation, and they're saying, what is an adult really?
It's
and-
well.
And that's a great, we got 5 people listening right now. 2 of them are Harbucks, so be
That is
very afraid.
That's a good question because you said when does adulthood happen, but we've never really defined what an adult is, and I don't think that we really know what an adult is, but we know how we want adults to act. Like we know how we want
But-
the adults to interact with us.
But I'm
Hey,
gonna give
guys.
everybody but how do adults act? What is the definition of an adult?
an adult acts with authority, and an adult has knowledge and experience. And so when there is a situation, or a situation is, an adult has a game plan. An adult
Mike,
has a
give us
plan to go
Mike,
through.
Look up the definition of adult because
Look up-
I don't
God.
think Ray just said what Ray said was right.
Wow.
It was not right. No.
So
Like, it wasn't
Holcomb,
correct.
Mr. Holcomb just asked, "What is an adult really?" And Sam Harbuck responded, "No one knows."
Yeah, I don't
I
think
think Sam's right.
I don't think anyone's ever seen one.
As a noun, an adult is a person who is fully grown or developed.
Okay. See,
Fully
I
grown or
am not.
developed.
I am not fully grown.
And
I don't think
and
we
you're
ever
certainly
get
not
fully
fully
grown.
developed.
No.
Fuck that.
Right. Like my penis may be fully developed, but I am not, in fact, fully developed.
You know, funny you should bring that up.
Now we're going to talk about penises.
When like this is just a funny story. So like when I was in like years ago when I was in Virginia, I was like 23, 24, and my wife kept complaining that it seemed like my penis was bigger.
Look at the bottom. Sam is interacting with the podcast fully automated as if nothing's happening.
As if nothing's going on.
As like he's here. Ray is explaining this. Tell him shut the
He's
fuck up.
explaining maturity. No, just kept complaining that my penis ain't bigger. I was like, yeah,
Right.
penises don't get bigger, sweetheart. You know,
Right.
I'm past that age. You know,
Right.
you're just being a whiner. You know.
Right.
And so she just kept complaining, and so I went and got my shoe size measure one day. I need new shoes.
Yeah.
And I was wearing size 12s, and the guy's like, dude, your feet are just fucked up because you're not wearing the right size. So,
Right.
all right, what size are my feet? And he's like, it's a size 13. That's a full
Right.
size bigger. I was like, wait a minute. What about my...
Biggie said something about this.
Exactly. Always trust the woman. Always
I wear
trust them.
13s. Know what I mean?
Your women know what's up. All right, this is has been fun as hell with Tattoo with Children. I'm Flavaray. You can find us on Instagram at Tattoo with Children, on Facebook at Tattoo with Children, and you can find us on Twitter at Tattooed With because fuck Jack.
Fuck Jack.
Fuck Jack.
You can find Ben Harbuck at Black Crow Brother on IG. You can find him also at Black Spot Tattoo Company. And you can find Mike Payne at CIO Payne on Instagram. Guys, it's been a great show. It's been a lot of fun. Keep it up. Keep up the interactions. Keep up asking questions. We will keep doing as best we can to keep the conversation going.
Carry the club like
Love y'all.
Neanderthal. The choir got everybody dancing, dog. Y'all on that X, I'm a sentinel, standing tall. No time to stand still, please don't meander, dog. They're throwing jazz at me to challenge my rap savvy. I sway like Callaway, I'm ahead, you'll never catch me.